Hi guys, hello and welcome to the Tayside and Fife BCS presentation. So this is a presentation about how we can use Jira and Confluence to manage projects. As you heard, the presentation has been recorded and you can listen to and watch the recording on the BCS YouTube channel. If you have any questions, can you save them to the end, but add them into the chat, and then we can do some moderation and refine them down if that's okay. And without further delay, I'll hand it over to Mr. Leo Bagan.
Thanks, John. Welcome, everybody. Listen, thank you very much for attending. Certainly on a very dark evening in December. I'm going to kick this off. As John said, it's a presentation that's principally focusing on managing projects using Jira. And what we're going to look at is the art of the possible. And we're going to use the Jira product and the Confluence product and an add-on reporting product with a view to understanding how it can support the project management function in terms of delivering outcomes for your organization. But before I kick it off, I'm kind of going to share a word, and I'm going to share a phrase that I use a lot. So I might subconsciously use it quite a lot through this presentation. And the word I use a lot is imperfect. Like everything else in terms of project delivery, when you're looking at organisation and methods, there's always room for improvement. Therefore, the word imperfect, I say a lot. And it's not a bad word. It's actually a good word. Because understanding and recognising your imperfections allows you to drive a set of behaviours or changes to make things less imperfect, and it drives you forward. The second phrase that I use quite a lot is it's a journey, and I'm going to try and deliver this presentation as a bit of a journey as well, if that's okay. But in terms of perfection, you're not going to see it here today. You're going to see the art of the possible. And in terms of a journey towards perfection, that's actually the exciting bit. The learnings that you take out of your project delivery, you apply them, you get a bit better. It's still imperfect. You take some learnings, you apply it, and you get a bit better. So with that in mind, I'm just going to fire right in, if that's okay, guys. Okay, so the presentation is split into 7 parts. John, can you mute your mic, if that's okay? I can hear you typing.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so there's 7 parts. Part 1, where I'm going to introduce the tools that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about Jira Cloud, EasyBI product, the Confluence product, and I'm actually going to use the first part to just get a common understanding or a common definition of the issue hierarchy, and I'll call it here Safe versus Jira. Those of you who are familiar with the Scaled Agile framework, you know that it has a requirements hierarchy, and those of you who are familiar with Jira will know that they don't quite match. But what you're going to see is a way to make them match, or to configure Jira and Confluence to almost mirror that hierarchy. I'm then going to talk about the project lifecycle, and the project lifecycle is just to put a point of reference around the rest of the presentation. Part 3 is going to be setting the context through an example process. Believe it or not, we're going to do some refinement. We're going to create epics. We're going to extrapolate features out of epics. And then we're going to use that in our discussions or the presentation discussion going forward. Part 4 is we're actually going to look at how Jira, specifically the boards and the workflows, help us to capture information that's of high value across all the disciplines or all the key stakeholders that contribute to the delivery. Part 5, I'm physically going to go into Jira, I'm physically going to go into Confluence, and I'm going to show you the art of the possible. And then we'll come to a kind of logical conclusion then. And the reason why I'm saying that before talking about part 6 is the standardization and the building of quality measures into your workflow, historically for me, has proved vital. Not just because it demonstrates a minimum level of quality, it gives you confidence when you're reviewing stories, when you're sprint planning, and that confidence becomes evident when you're doing your sprint reviews and your sprint retros. And then part 7, I'm not really going to talk about at all, I hope, but there's quite a lot of material that I cover off here at a very, very high level. I've included a page in this presentation of useful links so that if you want to go and do a bit of extra reading, you can. Okay, so moving on, part one. I would love very much to take credit for the words in this slide, but they're not mine. These are the words of Atlassian, which is a product vendor for Jira. And I've included it to kind of summarize contextually what the product does, because we're going to talk about it. And it's worthwhile kind of describing how I've set this slide. The matrix on the right-hand side contains a number of links. If you are interested in finding out more details, because I am going to summarize this very, very quickly, if you are interested in finding out more details in terms of the capability of Jira, then there's links there that will take you to the particular bits that I'm going to talk about, albeit at a very high level. And moving left is the marketing, the exact marketing words that I've taken from Atlassian. So if there's Americanized spelling or the punctuation's awful, it's actually Atlassian's, but I did check it and it seems okay. And I've split it into three: Jira for Agile teams, and I've highlighted italics and underlined the bits I just want to kind of focus on, because we're going to cover them off as we go through this presentation. So, and again, guys, I'm assuming, and I'm sure I'm on very, very safe ground here, that you guys can all read. So I'm not going to read every word on every slide. My expectation is that you guys will. But there's a paragraph there in terms of the benefit for Agile teams. The words that I'm going to highlight and talk about as we go through this is Scrum and Kanban boards. And if we go back to the matrix, a very simple high-level definition: Scrum boards, incremental delivery; Kanban boards, continuous delivery. And we'll evidence that a wee bit later on. Customizable workflows. I'm absolutely, definitely going to spend a little bit of time focusing on the customized workflows, because they offer a real power. They offer exceptional power in terms of making Jira comply with the processes that your organization already has, and then using them to affect a change in a measurable way. And then real-time performance reports is whatever you capture as part of your workflow or as part of your life cycle, it becomes available for reporting. That's what it does for the teams. Project management teams, it doesn't matter the project type. It could be a business transformation project, it could be an IT solution, it could be essentially a greenfield where you're creating something from scratch. It could be an amendment to something that you currently have. Jira doesn't care. It will cater for any project lifecycle because it's so configurable. And the other things just to call out is it supports your reporting and it tracks progress and productivity. And then Jira for product management teams, as it gives product management or the product management discipline the ability to build roadmaps for the future, to set the targets. And these targets generally are set based on a kind of strategic operational view that the organization has taken. The Jira for project management allows product managers to plan the journey to realize that future view. Track and share progress and dependencies and forecast is quite a powerful tool, as you'll hopefully see as we go through this. Moving on to EasyBI. Now, EasyBI is actually an add-on tool to Jira. And it's a bit like your iPhone, you can download apps, or the Microsoft, you can download apps, or Google, you can download apps. This is one of them. What it allows you to do in terms of custom reports, charts, and dashboards, it allows you to generate the reports that are useful and valuable to your organization. And it allows you to generate them in a way that you can actually configure them to the target audience that's going to consume them. So you could have the same data represented several different ways, depending on the stakeholder that's going to consume it. Interactive data analysis and visualization. It allows you to display data in a number of very different ways. The examples I'm going to show you today, I think I'm going to show you 3 different ways that it allows you to do it. and it allows you to do powerful calculations for advanced users. So in other words, when you have this, any data that you mandate as an input to Jira will be able to find its way into a report using EasyBI. Okay, and then last but not least, Confluence. Now, Confluence is an exceptionally powerful tool. It's native of Atlassian, therefore it has links into Jira. And because EasyBI is an add-on to Jira, you can actually bring EasyBI into Confluence as well. What I've highlighted in terms of, or the points I want to make in terms of Confluence is, for software development teams, it is a central hub. It is the go-to place that should, if configured correctly and populated correctly, form or answer the questions that your software development team may ask, whether it's requirements articulation, whether it's as-is process views, to-be process views, or whether it's procedural definitions. It's the one place that the team can go, and it's centralized. For project management teams, again, it's a collaboration platform. You can share ideas, research, you can collaborate. It also has the ability to introduce structured workflows, so it can support your life cycle as well. And for product management teams, again, it's a central collaboration platform, but allowing roadmaps to be built, and it, if used correctly, will demonstrably align the business strategy with the needs of the customers. And very importantly, last on the left-hand page is a single source of the truth. It very quickly will become a vital corporate asset, a very, very powerful corporate asset, as just a knowledge repository that's accessible across the organization. And again, on the right-hand side, in this presentation, I've left some links that if you want to do any further reading, you can. But to summarize, create, collaborate, and organize, central repository, bringing teams together. It's a great collaboration platform. And that's enough about the tools. Just before I move off part one, for those of you guys who are familiar with the Scaled Agile framework, you know that the Scaled Agile framework has the concept of a requirements hierarchy, and the requirements hierarchy is split into epic, business epic, or epic, business feature or capability, or feature, and story. And the story is the kind of lowest common denominator. And a feature is realized, realized means satisfied or delivered via either one or greater than one story. An epic is realized by the delivery or the satisfaction of one or greater epic. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because Jira doesn't actually mirror that hierarchy. But what I'm going to demonstrate today is that it is configurable to the point where you can make it. So in your organization, if you have a common vocabulary that is based on epic, feature, and story, you can still have a common vocabulary based on epic, feature, and story. What you'll have to do, though, in order to realize that, and you'll see the black box on the right-hand side of the slide, you can create something that mimics or mirrors the feature. What Jira has is green. Epic is realized by one or greater than one story. Story is realized by one or greater than one subtask. But what you're going to see today is that actually a feature in Jira is now realized by one or greater than one story as well. So it was just to kind of bring us onto the same page. Project life cycle.
That's 15 minutes, Leo.
I'm going to have to speed up, John, haven't I? Okay, going straight into the project life cycle. What this slide demonstrates, or what this slide is describing, is the Agile Unified Process. It's a standard life cycle, and it's as good as any. And the reason why I've included it in this slide deck is I want to try and get a common vocabulary as we go through. The Agile Unified Process starts off with inception, the brackets, it moves into elaboration, then into construction, then into transition, and then we're out the right-hand side of the process. But from a vocabulary perspective today, I may describe inception as funding, so prioritization and funding, and that funding would enable the discovery elements or the refinement elements, and then you'll see a big giant milestone. And I've put that milestone in essentially for the benefit of the project managers, because from a governance perspective, the delivery will be determined by the successful presentation and sign off of a business case. And therefore, as we go through discovery or as we go through refinement, we're going to have to keep that in mind in terms of supporting the generation and the presentation of the business case. That's the only reason why I've used the Agile Unified Process. The actor model of the process participants, again, I'm not going to read these because there are loads, but suffice to say that in terms of participants in the process, there are multiples. In terms of reporting and capturing reporting for data, we're going to have to make sure that as we go through the life cycle, each stage of the life cycle, we capture the reporting data that is valuable and relevant across the business, across the product or the product management discipline, the project and program disciplines, the delivery disciplines, the Scrum disciplines, the corporate disciplines, and actually, if we look at the inception, we have to absolutely ensure we've got executive level reporting as well. So as we go through the life cycle, the delivery life cycle, we want to capture the information that allows us to satisfy a suite of reports that could be distributed to the key stakeholders in a way that is meaningful to them. Okay, so now I've overlaid a Scrum process, and this is where the common vocabulary hopefully will come in. So at the top, we've got the Agile Unified Process, but I'm going to talk about it in terms of discovery and refinement, probably focusing on refinement. What actually are the products that we're going to generate, and what are the methods that we're going to apply? And in the Agile delivery product and methods, what I'm describing here is that when we are in refinement, the precondition as a project that the organisation as a whole would like to take forward. It has done analysis in the entire portfolio backlog, and it's prioritised that project. It's not saying that it's going to fund its delivery to completion, but in terms of the value that project may bring, it has bubbled its way to the top of the priority list. It is now in refinement. And what do we do with that? So we're going to create a number of products. During refinement, we're going to decompose that project into a set of epics. We're going to decompose those epics into a set of features, and we're going to decompose those features into a set of stories. Okay, pardon me. And as we go on, that's all I'm going to talk about in that slide, John, actually. So the products coming out of refinement will be epics, features, and stories. However, if we overlay the requirements, the governance requirements, or the project management, program management, and governance, we have to articulate the epics, the features, and the stories, one, in a way that supports the milestone, and we have to start making our progress in terms of meeting that milestone visible. So in terms of refinement or discovery, it really is an articulation of scope. So it's how big does this thing look, or how big is this thing? And that articulation of scope will be described in story terms, feature terms, and epic terms. But equally, we have to describe it in resource terms and cost terms to inform the business case. Underneath that, as we go through refinement, and here's a bit of a point, every organisation is different. If the organisation, from a product management perspective, decides that an epic has significant value, absolutely significant, it's compelling, but the value that could be realised from that epic will decay over time, it may be possible in the organisation to prioritise that epic, decompose it into features, decompose it into stories, and get a subset of funding approval to drive that through delivery and into production before refinement is finished for the whole project. So that's why when we go into the project management and reporting requirements, the schedule, the resources, and the cost forecast can actually straddle more than one lane. Underneath that, we've got the monitoring, the schedule, and the forecast. So we've made the assumption that we're now in delivery. And from a project management perspective, we have to report our progress against plan. We have to report our forecast spend against actuals. And we have to ensure that from a resource perspective, the resource profile that we had identified, in order to realise that, we have to report our compliance as well. And then underpinning all of that is monitoring the RAID items, absolutely monitoring the RAID items. Okay, so with that in mind, I've now taken out the stakeholders. With that in mind, what do we need from Jira in these stages? And how we set it up, or I'm going to demonstrate, or how am I going to demonstrate it being successful? So if we look at the refinement process itself, I've created a Jira refinement board, or a Jira board. It's a Kanban board that captures the steps that when you get to the right-hand column of that board, you are done. You've satisfied the definition of done. We need Jira to capture epics feature stories. We need workflows to manage the life cycle of the stories through the board. And we need Jira to be able to catch for us an estimate or a forecast of scale, how big it is, so that we can inform the funding or the business case milestone. But we need to capture it in a way that's meaningful to all participants. And by that, I mean all stakeholders. So if you are delivering or refining at a portfolio or program level, then you won't be the only delivery team engaged. And therefore, when you describe your epics, when you describe your features, it's good to ensure you have a common vocabulary. So when you're discussing it at your Scrum ceremony, or you're discussing progress, you're actually using that common vocabulary. People know what you're talking about because they use the same vocabulary. So we need the refinement board set up, issue types, epic feature story, and we need it done in such a way that product managers can prioritize, delivery managers can ensure and satisfy the kind of capability from a resource and a discipline perspective, and project managers meet their milestones. At the same time, we want to measure the quality, consistency, competence, and completeness. Our definition of done has to have some measure of quality, and we also have to report in line with the governance standards that the organisation currently has. Now, I'm going to kind of summarise the next two lanes. So I've set up a Jira refinement board. It's a Kanban board, and it's going to manage the refinement of the discovery process. I've set up a Jira delivery board, which is actually going to manage and measure the delivery process. I'm not going to read what it's for. And I've also set up a Jira route to live board. And again, that's a Kanban board. The exception here is a delivery board. I've set that up as a Scrum board. And that'll become apparent as to why slightly later on. I'm just going to leave this slide up for about 10 or 15 seconds, just so you can read the purpose of what we need Jira to be able to achieve for us in order to ensure that we can manage this delivery life cycle through the refinement stages, the delivery stages, and through into a working software or the production. Cool. I'm now going to set the context. Actually, John, I might have caught up there, actually. I'm going to set the context. I'm going to go back to this. Now, in order to give meaning to part 4, 5, and 6, we are actually going to do refinement. And when I say refinement, refinement's going to happen in front of you, just so that we can put a context around about the reporting bit and draw it back to the project management or supporting the project managers in terms of delivery. So what you'll see, guys, on your screen just now is an example process. It starts on the left, happy paths its way through a set of process activities all the way to the right. And it's a loan request process, or it's a loan process. It's a satisfaction of somebody applying for a loan and being granted a loan in a happy path. So a request is made. Now, the request it could be made in any number of ways. It could be made on a phone call, asking for an application form. An application form is then submitted, it's completed, which moves on to the apply. But equally, the loan request could be done online. So you could apply, the application could come in a multitude of different ways. Once the application has been received, various checks are undertaken to person, credit, employment. By the way, these are just my very high level abstraction to demonstrate epics and features. A decision is made, it's a happy path dismission, the loan's going to be granted, the documents are prepared, the legal docs are prepared, they're issued, they're signed, they come back, the signature and the documentation is revalidated, and then the back end systems, the funds are drawn down and the loan is then placed. Very, very simple. So as I bounce on, for the purposes of this presentation, we've split that process down into epics. We've got an apply epic, an assess epic, and a pay epic. So we've got 3. And we've decomposed the features pretty much based on the process activities. So the apply feature will be realized when the loan request, the apply epic will be realized when the loan request feature and the apply for loan feature are complete. The assess epic will be realized when the person check, the credit check, and the employment check features are complete. The pay epic will be realized when the documents prepared, document signs, validated, accounting entries, loan funded, and system update features are complete. And as we decompose them, we will break down the features into a number of stories, story 1 to story n. And again, based on the previous slides, the loan request feature will be realized when the story 1 to story n and the scope of that feature are done. Capturing the reporting data. Okay. How do we set Jira up to offer us as an organisation what we need, and to break down our epics and features into stories? So the screen that you've got in front of you, and I've done 2 workflows. The screen that you've got in front of you is actually a snapshot of the workflow that I created for this presentation, and I've superimposed it with a description of the boards that I discussed earlier. So if I just point, this workflow starts on the creation of an issue. In this particular case, it's a user story workflow. The creation of a user story, it transitions into a status of grooming scope, and then the workflow will push it from grooming scope. In fact, the workflow will mandate that it transitions from grooming scope to clarify detail, and then clarify detail, estimate to order queue to backlog. And that represents the workflow for the refinement board, which is a Kanban board. Now, up at the top right, I've put this to do, doing, done. These are Jira statuses, and you'll see the colours. When I show you in Jira, grey is to do. It's something that's not happening. You won't be happening yet. It'll form part of the ceremonies when you're backlog refining or you're grooming, but it's not actually, you're not taking any measures on it other than a cycle time measure, which I'll talk about a wee bit later. The doing is the verb. It is when the delivery teams or the various teams are actually undertaking some work in order to achieve these goals. And the done is when Jira is recording that it's actually done. So I've talked about the refinement board. That gets us to a point of refinement. I am going to focus on order queue because it looks relatively out of place that you're going to bring a story onto a board. You're going to clarify the detail or articulate the requirement. You're going to do solutioning or solution and optioneering, feasibility and optioneering for your solution, and you're going to scale that requirement. You're going to move that requirement into estimate and you're going to record that scale against it. Once it moves out of estimate into order queue, the reason why that is done is because actually from a refinement perspective, you've achieved your goal. You understand the scale, you understand the scope, and therefore you can contribute in terms of business case generation at that point. Now,
that's 30 minutes, Leo.
Thanks, John. Where am I? 16, getting there. You might not have done your detailed analysis and such like, but that's okay. It's the definition of good enough. Pardon me. So if I look at the delivery board is when you realize it, when you actually do it. So the story moves into analysis and design. It changes its status to doing because you want to record, now you want to record certain elements. You want to record how long it takes. You want to record how long it stays in each lane. But this workflow and these transitions, or the workflow is guided by these transitions, and your ways of working organizationally are standardized. Now, the reason why I've set this up as a Scrum board is in terms of delivery, it's much more common for the delivery manager to own this entire workflow, or this entire section of the workflow, which is why you want to assign measures. And the difference between monitor and measure is measures are things that you can control. So you can control the way that this delivery board operates. You can control how the people on this delivery board operate because they are part of the delivery team. And you want to start gathering measures and metrics for this because you want to demonstrate that you're getting better. So you want to capture measures at a particular point in time and then build on these measures, demonstrating that you're actually increasing the efficiency of your delivery process and therefore adding more value organizationally. And then the workflow goes into the demo backlog. Now, in truth, the reason why from test exec into demo backlog is demo backlog means that you're now collaborating or engaging with a discipline out with the delivery team, which means that you go back to the Kanban board and you're monitoring it. You want to know how the health of the board and how well the board's getting on, but actually the board may be blocked by something you can't control or change, but you still want to be able to ask that question, which is why we've got 3 different boards and 2 different types. The workflow at the bottom I've actually included just to kind of give an example of how configurable Jira actually is. This is a workflow for an issue type of user story. This is a workflow for an issue type of epic. And Jira is configurable that it will allow you to apply different workflows depending on the issue type you've got. Okay, what does that really mean, to be honest? What you'll have on your screen, guys, is you've got a screenshot of the board that I'm going to take you through slightly later on. So grooming scope, clarify detail, estimate, order queue, and backlog. This is a Kanban board, pardon me, and it's called refinement. It's a Kanban board that we've put in place to manage the process of refinement. Down the left-hand side, you can see that our epics are represented and our features are represented, pardon me, because that's what we want to deliver on this board. We want to drive the stories that relate to the feature and the epic from the grooming scope lane to the order queue lane. I'm going to pause on the order queue lane. And the reason why I'm pausing is when the story gets to the order queue, you want to ensure that within your workflow and within your transitions between these lanes, that you capture absolutely the information that is required to meet your definition of done good enough. So you want to exploit the workflow and the transitions to ensure you capture the information that proves to you that when a story gets to the order queue, it is of good enough quality to be included in the sprint planning ceremony. And all this really says is that creating the card jumps into the order queue, that is a transition that you can amend. Moving the story from grooming scope to clarify detail is a transition that you can amend. And when I say amend, you can build screens into these transitions that capture the data you need at the point you know it. So the story would start off with a relatively small amount of data, not particularly frightening for anybody, but as you find out more data, as your requirements becomes mature, as your disciplines look at potential solutions in terms of that, it captures that data as well. It wants to capture that at the time where it's relevant. What I've done here as well is primary actors in grooming scope, product managers in terms of prioritization, business analysts in terms of high-level requirements articulation, and epics and stories as the issue type that can be there. And if we drive this correctly, we'll introduce a common vocabulary, which is the title. It'll capture the needs in business terms and it'll inform the priority. And I'm going to show you that right at the very end of the presentation when I talk about quality measures. And the definition I've done is a template completed. So you can generate templates that you can apply to your workflow, and you can enforce compliance through your transitions, so that when you get to your reporting, you're confident that the data is there. And from a quality perspective, because we've gone through the ordered queue, is of the appropriate quality to inform that report. Cool. Okay, Jira and Confluence real-time reporting. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to come out of the presentation and I'm going to open up Jira. And my hope is that I'll get through this relatively quickly, John, if that's okay. So what are we doing here? I'm just going to minimize the board. So this is essentially the board that you saw in the last slide. And as you can see, when we did our refinement or our grooming, we created an epic apply, an epic assess, and an epic pay. And if I just focus in on the epics, what the sharp-eyed will notice is that underneath the apply epic, there are no features. However, underneath the assess epic, there are 2 features, and underneath the pay epic, there are several features. Now, I've done that quite deliberately because in order to inform the presentation, I've actually done sprint planning on the apply epic. They are in sprint and they're on the delivery board. Strictly speaking, that epic is in the wrong lane, but the presentation or this screen wouldn't work without it there. So I apologize to the purists for having the epic somewhere that it shouldn't be, but it informs the presentation. Now, what is this board telling us? At first glance, what is it telling us? Because there is nothing under the apply, and we know that there are features underneath that, the board is telling us that that's in the backlog. Therefore, the features have been through sprint planning and are in delivery. The assess epic is sitting in the order queue. And what that's telling us at a glance is that actually we've finished refinement on this. And if I open these up, you'll see that all the stories, oops, daisy, in terms of, oops, excuse me a second. I'm actually going to move these stories. I've moved that prematurely because I moved them back for the demonstration. As these stories move, sorry, you can see an example of a transition screen coming up. I'm just going to select that. Just going to check I've got level of effort because it will tell me if I don't. There's no dependencies. That's okay. I've got nothing. I've got no rule on dependencies. And I'm going to move this across as well, if that's okay. Level of effort. And I've got no dependencies. So rather prematurely, I had put or moved the assess epic into order queue on the assumption that the stories had got there and therefore were ready for sprint planning. And if I go down to the last one, you can see that the epic is not as far across the board, which means that these stories are not quite as mature, or these features are not quite as mature. And believe it or not, it's probably stuck, or the epic is probably stuck in clarified detail because there's one story that we haven't done anything with at all. And that's very deliberate because I was going to give you a demonstration of how the workflows chime in Jira and let you capture the information that is pertinent as it goes across the board, which I'm just going to do now. Actually, we move from grooming scope to clarified detail. We want some named resources, so we're now going to start analysis on this, and we're possibly in order to inform that analysis, we're going to have to do some systems analysis. So we want to bring in the dev discipline in order to support us. And we're going to let the QA discipline or give the QA discipline visibility that this card is moving so that we've got the appropriate level of QA assigned to the card because they have a very particular task to perform. And what that demonstrates is that as we move the stories, the workflow, we comply with the workflow but the transition asks us questions, and it's questions we're going to use later in our reporting. We move it again. We don't actually need any more questions. Our clarified detail, our requirement is articulated. It's been articulated across the disciplines who have an input in that. From a business analyst perspective, articulation of requirement. From our dev discipline, satisfaction of requirement. And from our QA discipline, the proof that they're going to apply that demonstrates that the requirement is in fact satisfied. It's ready to estimate. And then we move it, we perform our estimation, and then we move it, and we're looking for the scale. Now, most organizations will describe scale in terms of points, but because we are not doing full detailed analysis on this, our refinement board is there to inform the business case, inform the prioritization, get an understanding of the value, and therefore the sequence of play. We have this concept of doubt. It's almost Donald Rumsfeld. The story points tells us what we know. That's how big it is. And actually, the doubt is our scaling of what we don't know. And depending on an organization's maturity, that might be enough. You may have a very, very established team. Comparative sizing in terms of refinement is very, very well known, and they're very comfortable to end it there. But in organizations where you don't quite have that, then we're also capturing the level of effort. So we'll know in terms of point size what that is, and we're now building up a picture in terms of what actually should the level of effort be for a point, for a story point of 1, or a story point of 2, or a story point of 3, and we build that as we go. If there are any dependencies that might impact the planning, so if you can't start this or realize this until some other team completes something, then we capture that as well. And if there's some other team that is waiting on you for completing something, we capture that as well. And that's the story in. Cool. Okay, so if I move on to the delivery board, and I'm not going to talk very much about the delivery board because what I really wanted to capture was the fact that the transitions give you options in capturing data. The delivery board is different because you'll see up the top that it's based on sprints, which is really kind of cool. And that is our measure board. And then the route to live, we're back to Kanban. And I've kind of got an example of some stories that are on route to live. So if you look at a transition starts in refinement and it ends on route to live. One point to note here is that on our route to live, demo backlog, demo complete, these are not things that the delivery team can do in isolation. And in fact, from a product manager and a business review, a sprint review, we use this board to capture sign-off. So it's good that the product manager owns this and will schedule the demos at a time that suits the product manager. Therefore, they will be pulled into the demo lane. A demo will be undertaken and they will be pushed into demo complete. What we get for free in that very, very simple transition is the name of the product manager who's awaiting the demo, the time that it transitioned from demo backlog into demo, and then the same with the movement from the demo into the demo complete. When we get to the demo complete, we've essentially got an audit and sign off from a product manager perspective of the competence and completeness. In other words, we've satisfied that requirement. And from a business perspective, via the product manager or via the product manager and the business, we've got sign off for it. Okay.
That's 45 minutes, Leo.
I know, Joanne, I know, I'm struggling slightly. Let's see, Confluence. What I'm going to do, John, is I'm going to probably use the next few minutes in Confluence. I may cut it short if that's okay, and then go to the quality bits. Just to leave, if it's okay, just to leave up to maybe 5 minutes for questions, if that's okay. What I've got here, guys, is I've got an example of a Confluence page. And again, this is now tying it all back to the multiple stakeholders who want a view on the status or health of your delivery. Project managers, you'll notice this is a standard highlight report, as will delivery managers. Now, I've put myself, I think I've kind of promoted myself into the role of delivery manager here and the overall RAG. How is this used? This is updated at an agreed frequency, weekly, generally. And this table up here just tells us some background information. Who the delivery manager is, essentially responsible for the delivery, the overall RAG. Now, like I said, everything in this demonstration is happy path. So this project is currently tracking green, which is great. And I've introduced, or we've introduced the project codes in terms of refinement, delivery and route to live, just to demonstrate that people charging to this may be charging me to different codes depending on the status or the life cycle stage that they're doing or they're at. The next bit down here, definitely project managers will recognise this: scope, schedule, risk, resource, money. What this is a summary RAG status. How is this project tracking against its plan? How is it tracking in terms of its resources, its RAID items, and therefore how is it tracking overall? And the best example I could give was in my current organisation. If I report any of these that are not green, you are guaranteed that either your phone will ring or a question will pop into your Teams chat, and that's expected. And what this section here does is it describes your return to green actions. So if anything here is not green, then you pretty much state, what are you doing to get it back? What are you doing? And it also leaves room for, in general, how are you getting on? What deliveries have you completed? What are you doing? What have you to do? What refinement have you completed? What are you doing? What have you to do? And it's very powerful. It's very, very simple, but it satisfies the needs at an abstracted level of the delivery manager, the project manager, the program manager. And actually, it's also very useful also to the product managers. So multiple disciplines can get a view based on this one page. I'm just going to go back to what I kicked this off with. It's not perfect. It's our view. And in terms of the journey, identifying that it's not perfect and putting in place change measures that make it more perfect actually makes the journey quite exciting. So if I go down, we've now done a refinement, as I've shown you actually in Jira. We now have the schedule beginning to emerge. And what this tells us is that we have 3 epics. The epics are broken down as per these features. And it just so happens that these 2 features are getting realized by a single sprint. But what this tells us at a glance is refinement is done for that epic. Refinement is ongoing for that epic. And it's also ongoing for that epic. But it gives you an indication of completeness. In terms of refinement, that gives you a view on refinement. Delivery tells you that this team are actively working on delivering a set of outcomes. This action, stop, start, continue, is a collaboration between the delivery teams and the product management function in terms of something may come up organizationally that actually, for whatever reason, takes precedence over what you're doing. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that a product manager may think or may ask you to stop what you're doing and focus on something that has emerged of higher priority. The play sequence, pardon me, is a play sequence as directed by the product manager, the business value or risk, and then the delivery piece, when your sprints are starting, when your sprints are ending. But in this particular case, because I set it up with only one sprint, it's all the same dates. If you hand over, once your delivery is complete, you hand over to an independent validation, whether it's a central testing service, a central UAT service, but it's independent. You can also forecast the dates for that. leading up to the release date, and then an understanding of the RAG status. So what you've got there is you've got your schedule beginning to emerge. And in terms of the milestone from a business case perspective, once refinement is complete for everything, you can present a business case holistically. But if it's only complete for one particular epic, then actually you have the option. If the product manager describes the value or sees the value as being high, then you have the option to present and draw down on the overall funding and get that thing moving. And last but not least, John, I'm going to have to do this very, very quickly, I'm afraid. How does Jira link into this? I'm going to open pretty much most of these. So on this page, efficiency measures, and efficiency measures you get free because of the way your workflow captures the data in Jira. I'm going to make my screen slightly smaller, if that's okay. So velocity. So the velocity is essentially the amount of points that you've realised or completed over a time period, and I've split it down into delivery. That's the bit I am primarily interested in, the delivery board, refinement, and ready for deployment. In other words, route to live. Unfortunately, in this project, we haven't actually got there yet. Cycle time, the length of time that, or the average length of time that stories are languishing in lanes. From a delivery perspective, this is actually very, very telling. And if I'm going to make it bigger again, what you can see here is that there's quite a long time. The stories are sitting in the order queue. And therefore, you might want to ask a question. So you're monitoring this. So this is a board that you monitor. There might be a question there. There might be some support or assistance that you can render in order to make that better. And the same with the route to live. Again, I'm going to minimize this slightly. But I'm going to bring on scope and scale, epic feature and sprint breakdown. Scope and scale. Now, given that we've created 3 epics for this, and we've got an epic sequence or a priority of epic, this is just another way that the data that we capture in Jira, we get for free in reporting. If we extend that, then we can see that in terms of that epic, and like I said, it's kind of in the wrong lane because it's pretty much almost done. We can see the status of the stories that make up that epic across all 3 groups. And we can drill in. So that's just an example report. And then the last one is the epic feature and sprint. And it's just a decomposition that tells you from an epic perspective, the feature that realizes that epic, the sprints that have been created in order to demonstrate that the epic has been realized or the feature has been realized. Things that say no sprint mean that the sprint planning hasn't happened yet, and therefore there's no active sprint on the board. And what I've done is I've literally just brought into this report the disciplines, because in terms of delivery, you want to ensure that you are not overusing the disciplines that you have. You're not over committing to deliver stuff that you don't have the resources to do. Dependencies in and dependencies out, because we captured it at the story, the points to doubt, the forecast, and the level of effort. And then, John, I think the last one that I'm probably going to share will be, in fact, I'll do the epic progress because it's a slightly different, and I'll do sprint progress because it's a slightly different. So the epic progress.
That's in the last 5 minutes now.
Yeah. Okay. I knew it would be tight, John. I apologise. I won't necessarily talk about these. Suffice to say, from a reporting perspective, if you capture the information in Jira and your transitions and your workflows allow you to mandate that capture, you can bring them out in a myriad of different types of reports and display them through a single Confluence page. Cool. John, I'm going to now very quickly go back. I'm going to jump over them because I've talked about it and talk a bit about the quality measures, and I will be literally 1 minute. Now, the reason why I've included the quality measures is Jira will allow you to template things up. On the left-hand side of this slide, you have the epic template. On the right-hand side of this slide, you have a story template. Now, I've just created this for the benefits of this presentation. But what Jira allows you to do from a template perspective, it allows you to enforce a common vocabulary. It allows you to ensure that the people that you have in your squad or the people that you have in your team complete or understand the definition of done and the quality measures, because it's driven by the template. You'll notice, those of you guys who know SAFe, you'll know that what you'll see here is almost a standard epic hypothesis, but it brings the product manager in terms of outcomes, expected outcomes and lead indicators. It helps in the prioritization and it drives dependency mapping, and that informs your planning and also the sequence. Story exactly the same. I'm going to jump over the schemes that I set up. John, I'm now just going to go to the useful links. Guys, that kind of brings us to the end. I'm sorry that I've left so little time for questions. But in terms of the presentation, what I have included on my useful links is links to the Agile Unified Process, the Scrum.org, the subway map actually to Agile practices, because that's actually very, very helpful at a very high level. The SAFe requirements model, as I discussed in slide 6, and a load of other very, very useful links that if you have the desire and you'd like to find out more, these links are a very good place to start. John, that's me done.
Leo, thank you very much. I've got one question from John Silvio to start with. Can we automate tests and builds after each task is complete from within Jira?
Yes, Jira will allow you to create an event, but depending on how you do it, yes. That's a very short answer. But it's highly configurable. So yes, the workflow will allow you to initiate an event, and that event could be an automated build. Yes.
Oh, thank you for that. Just lots of praise, Leo. They, we as an audience really enjoyed that. So
brilliant.
So thank you very much,
guys. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So. Thank you all very much, and we'll make the slides and the video available to you. We'll send out an email to the attendees and send you an update. So thank you all very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.